To see you, Victoria. Lynn, wonderful. Jacinta, Fiona, gosh, lots of people. It's wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me. It's such a wonderful thing when you can all join live. As I said at the top of this webinar, we had about 100 people, 96 people register for this particular topic. So it's an important topic. And we do want to make sure we aren't losing people at the back door without doing anything about it as a dental practice, because we all keep getting told that how much more it costs to attract a new patient rather than keep an existing one. And this process of reactivating, I'm just going to do this to my camera so it's rejigs its focus. Don't know what's happening there. What we want to do is go through this webinar and have it be a wonderful tool in identifying why would patients be leaving and what can we do to keep them from becoming inactive in our patient base. So let's get stuck straight into it. I'll share my screen, bring up my PowerPoint and go into full screen. And we're not going to go worry about who we are. I think everyone knows who we are after this many webinars that we've gone through in this particular series. And if you've missed any of the past weekly webinars over the past month, don't worry. We're going to let you know how to access those recordings and resources later on. But with this particular topic, reactivating your inactive patient base, what we're going to cover is, when does a patient become inactive? What does that actually mean? We're also going to cover how to find those inactive patients in your database. We're going to cover, why do patients stop attending your practice in the first place? Why do they become inactive? We're going to give you some ideas on reactivating your inactive patients and how can we prevent your inactive patient list from perpetually growing. Just a reminder, if anyone's got any questions or something to chat, I think it's only the Q&A that's active, feel free to put your questions in all the way through the process, because it's great to have those questions answered while they're fresh in your mind. If they're fresh in your mind, they may also be occurring to other people as well. So let's have a think about why we want to attract back our inactive patients. Why don't we just leave them becoming inactive and just keep getting more and more new patients? And a big part of it is because when we've already got a patient that's been attending our practice for any length of time, we've already got a rapport with them, a trust with them. The average practice has 60 to 70% chance of gaining treatment acceptance from an existing patient, but only a 20% chance of getting a commitment from a new prospect. So we want to make sure that we are keeping those relationships going, because they're the ones that already know, like, and trust us, rather than starting fresh relationships all the time. Another reason why we want to attract back our inactive patients is that the average practice does lose between 10 and 15% of its patients each year. That increases our need to spend money on marketing and increases our need for that constant flow of new patients. Where if we can reduce that 10 to 15% figure down to a smaller percentage, we're winning. Also, it is considered that 20% of the average practice patient base is inactive. And I would certainly believe that. I think some practices it will be wildly higher. Certainly some practices might maybe be a little lower. But when we go through the categories of patients that we've spoken about before, but we're going to touch on again quickly, we'll start to recognise, well, we're always going to have some percentage of our patient base be residing as inactive, and there's reasons behind that. However, if we can encourage the patients that do generally keep returning for treatment, whether it be regular every 6 months or every couple of years for recalls, but certainly all of their urgent care, they come back to you. If we can encourage those patients to remain active with us rather than go somewhere else, that's got to be good for business. So those three categories of patients that we've identified, and every practice out there has these three categories of patients: the transient, the loyal, and the perpetual. The transient patient is, we all know who they are. It is the kind of patient that doesn't come in for general checkups and cleans, and doesn't come in for little decays or fissure sealants or anything like that. They really just come when there's an urgency. And even when they turn up to your appointment time and the dentist is looking in their mouth and they're seeing that there's this toothache or broken down tooth, and they say, I can see various other conditions and issues going on in your mouth, I really do encourage you to come back for a checkup. The transient type of patient may or may not turn up and for that checkup. And if they do come in for the checkup, they may or may not get that incomplete treatment done, that treatment plan done. The transients aren't necessarily loyal to you. They just want to see anyone who can see them when they do have an urgency. And everyone needs to be seeing transient patients, of course, because when people are in trouble, that's part of the reason, that's part of our contribution to the community. They're the transients. The next group are the loyals. And the loyals are the patients that they don't come every 6 months for their checkups and cleans. They may come every 2, 3, 4, 5 years for a checkup and clean. But if they've got an issue, a tenderness, toothbrush abrasion, a toothache, they'll only want to come to you. And even if you can't see them at the time they want to be seen, they'll wait a day to make sure they do see you. The perpetual patients are just like the loyals, but they do come every 6 months for those appointment times. Very easy to categorize these patients and find them in your database. The transients, just look at the history of their 013's urgent appointment times, no checkups and cleans. The receptionist knows a transient straight away. Often they ring up as a new patient and they say, I haven't been to the dentist for 15 years. Certainly the practitioner knows they're transient the minute they open their mouth up and they do see various issues going on there. The loyals and perpetuals as well. You can see them, you can pick them because that's just look at the history that they've got within the history of that patient. The reason why it's important to understand these three categories of patients is we're always going to have transients coming through. The transient patients become inactive swiftly. And so we're always going to have some percentage of our patient base that is considered inactive. And what I encourage you to do is look into what is your percentage figure. And then go, great, that's our figure. Now all we have to do is improve from there. And that way you're making it a meaningful goal for your particular practice. So let's have a think about what an inactive patient is. What an active patient is. What an active patient is, it's going to be your loyal and perpetual patients. It won't be the transients. They're not actively seeking out your advice and taking your advice, etc. So loyal and perpetual patients would be considered active patients. They generally do come back within an 18-month period. Certainly the perpetuals come a number of times within an 18-month period. And any person that's attended your practice in the past 18 months, this is more of a software database figure. Go back. When you are talking to a consultant about active patients and how to find them within the database just kind of collects everyone that's been in the past 18 months and say they're active. Obviously, you're going to have transients in there and all the things. It's going to be very difficult and hard work and time consuming to try to get an exact figure. So let's go general. Let's say, okay, we're happy with 18 months. We're happy with whatever figure turns up in that 18-month search, and we'll just call them active. That's okay. At least we know what's going on for our practice, so it's nice and relevant. When a patient is considered inactive, is number one, when they haven't attended your practice for that 18-month period. Number two is when they've relocated to another practice. And so therefore, any request of records that you get, you could then classify that patient as inactive because they're no longer going to be returning to you for their dental treatment. They're going to be going elsewhere. Sometimes they do request their records, sometimes they don't. But most of the time I would suggest that they would, especially if they were perpetuals and they really wanted that history to follow them to the new location. Another way of classifying a patient into inactive is if they've moved out of the area. And so if they're no longer living in the state or a suburb far off or another country, we could then classify them as inactive, of course. How about those that leave after a complaint? I'm never coming back here again. Certainly, they would be classified as inactive. They're not going to be returning. And transient patients, of course, as we mentioned at the start, the transient patients will generally become inactive because they won't come back in that 18-month period generally, and so they could be considered inactive. And so when you look at your inactive patient base, these are the sort of patients that we're talking about. How are we going to find them? The best way is, you may already know how to do these searches in your dental software. Certainly the newer dental software systems that are on the market now, they may be finding far more easy ways and direct ways of tapping into these lists. What we suggest is, if you know already how to do it, then do a search. Every patient that hasn't been here for 18 months, I want that list. Always be considerate though. Do we want everyone? What if this practice has been around for 30 years? Do I want to be contacting people from 30 years ago? Not necessarily. And so maybe do your search. They haven't been for 18 months, up to 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Pick a figure, pick a time period that you're happy with, and go, now that's going to be the list that gets generated, and that's going to be the list that we're going to look at and see if we can attract any of them back again. One of the ideal ways of making sure you are making best use of your dental software is to make sure that you are checking in with the software company with support and saying, this is the figure I want a list of patients that haven't been here between an 18-month and 5-year mark. I want that list, and have them walk you through the process. That's increasing your training on how to use your dental software as well. And also, all these software companies are continually updating their systems. So if you haven't done this kind of list for a couple of years, there may be a better way of doing it by now, and then they'll be able to let you know about that. So that's always a very useful call to make. Do consider, once you've got that list in front of you, do you want all of these patients back again? So is it going to be a waste of your time trying to reactivate a transient patient that came in once 3 years ago? Probably a waste of your time and money. Do you want back the ones that are transient because they've passed away? That's you don't need to do that. What about the ones that had complained heavily about you and made a big ruckus, were quite aggressive, and you don't want them back in the practice anyway? You don't necessarily want them back either. So do have a think about going through that list. And if it's a long, long list, that's okay. Chunk it down. What's that saying? How to eat an elephant, one bite at a time. If that list is 10 pages long, put 9 pages to the side and say, I'm just going to concentrate on page 1 at the moment, and go through each of those contacts, putting a mark through, taking off the ones in that list that you don't actually want back in your practice. However, if they left because they moved location to another country or another state, keep them on your list. Who knows? They may have moved back to the area. You just don't know. The second thing to consider is, how are you going to measure success? Measuring these sort of exercises is so crucial. Is it going to be a waste of time? Is the messaging going to need to change in order to get better results? Tracking your success is a fantastic way of doing it. And when you're doing it as a large project that you're doing one bite at a time, it might be the best way to manually check off. If you're doing a phone call list, for example, actually making notations of how many messages you left, how many times did you actually get to speak to the person, and how many people actually made an appointment time. We want to make sure that we're measuring the success that we're achieving with the way we do the task. And we're going to talk about what that process is going to be, such as what mode of communication we're going to use when we contact these people, what message are we going to provide them, are we going to offer up an incentive, because it could be any of those things that just need to be tweaked in order to get better results. And it's through measuring our success that we can determine that. The third consideration is, make sure you get your systems and team patient ready. No use attracting people back and then delivering them another reason to stay away. So just consider this kind of scenario, that you have got a really rude dental receptionist. She's been there for years and years and years. Nobody knows how to approach her about being a bit more polite to the patients, but she's a bit of a patient repellent. And you want to go through a reactivation process, and you are trying to appeal to some patients who left because your receptionist is crabby. And then they come back, sure, I'll give it a try again. They come back and there she is again, still behind the front desk, still being crabby. Why am I back here again? And you've kind of lost the chance to ever attract back that patient again. So by the time we've completed this webinar, you would have been able to identify how to find out how to improve what you're offering to patients is, how you're going to improve upon the patient experience that you deliver. So before you start appealing to people to come back again, go through this process with your team. How can we improve just 1 or 2% in all of these areas? So when our patients, if we are successful at getting them to come back through again, they're experiencing something different, something better. Then we've got them for a good chunk of time again. And so do make sure you get yourselves systems and everything patient ready to be giving them a better result next time. Let's have a think about all the reasons why patients may want to leave. And these are all of the areas where you can make improvements. Have a think to yourself, does this one, could it potentially be relevant to our practice? And therefore, what can we do to improve things? Every now and again, I'm going up to the chat just to make sure no one's putting in any questions. Number one reason why patients leave is that they are unhappy with the service. Either the team, maybe the practitioner, maybe the appearance of the practice has just been looking so shabby but never gets addressed. Maybe lack of technology. You know, I keep hearing about these scanners and this and that and these services, and I never get to actually see them in the practice that I'm attending. So maybe I've got to try somewhere else. Maybe the policies they're unhappy with. One of the things that I talk about quite often is cancellation policy, that quite often, if you have a good look at it, the number of patients who are breaking their appointment times, turning up late or failing altogether, it's a very small percentage of your total patient base. And when we put in very harsh policies to prevent that, because that small percentage really are quite frustrating and have an impact, then we're actually putting out a kind of mean-spirited policy, or a policy that people who never break their appointment times wouldn't dream of it. Look at that and go, oh, that's a bit nasty. I'm being threatened with a fine. I've never even done anything yet, but in case I do, I'm going to be fined. I've been a patient in this practice for 20 years, never done anything wrong. And so maybe sometimes the policies over a period of time have started to become that with which your regular perpetual patients that have always been really happy with you are no longer happy anymore with those sort of systems. Little question there. How would you answer a patient who makes a complaint about the fees being too high when they can go to another practice that is cheaper? That is a great question, Jessica, and that is a big reason why all of the theory tends to be that if just when you gauge something, judge something on price alone, some people will see it as too expensive, some people will see it as reasonable, and some people will see it as too cheap. When a patient is given the opportunity to see the value that they are experiencing, potentially about to enjoy, all of a sudden that fee that seemed overpriced at the start, that can start to balance out. And one of the things that we encourage dental teams to do is, and I'll pop this as a free access presentation, is to increase the level of customer service in your practice. And it takes less than you think, but we're just adding more energy and enthusiasm behind all the things that we do. Because what we want to do is, if our fees are this and the value that patients are achieving is this, then sometimes they can go, oh, it's a bit expensive, or I can get the same elsewhere. However, if your fees stay the same, but the experience that you're delivering to your patients in comparison to all your competition is this, then all of a sudden the fee seems absolutely reasonable. And so that is the key about getting around that conversation. So I'm going to make sure that that customer service, increasing the level of customer service in your practice, is a recording for you to watch with the team, because we're not all about always reducing down the cost of dentistry. We need to be aware of it, but it is about increasing the amount of value they have. So the cost now seems perfectly appropriate. We'll go into a little bit about how to address the affordability of dentistry in general, to make sure that you are providing all of those additional ways that patients can afford treatment, really effective payment plans, not just easy pay, or what is it, ever after pay, not just after pay, but really effective payment plans, a series of them that address all the different services in your patient base. Another reason why patients leave is because they've moved away from the area. We've spoken about that. They are either now a few suburbs away. Maybe they changed jobs and your practice was close to their job. Maybe they've relocated country or state. A change in fees. This is also a big reason why patients can change. What I have seen in the past is that a practice hasn't increased their fees on a regular basis in the past, and all of a sudden they need to do a big jump, and it's a jump that's big enough that they're actually the patients are seeing, those regular patients are seeing that jump. And so sometimes a change in fees can be one, or maybe there are regular fee increases, but it happens to a larger degree than should be expected or normal and happening every single year, or worse still, every few months. And so patients start to get a sense of, this is getting out of control, I might look around. Another reason why patients leave is you've got a new practitioner in place. Love the old practitioner. New one, not so great. It happens in every industry. You know, we get used to our hairdresser. We like the chef at that restaurant. Then there's a change. And we're like, oh, that was, you know, the main reason I was attending is gone now. So I'm going to look around for somewhere else now as well. Fifth reason why people leave your practice is health fund. Maybe they've always been they've been a Bupa or Medibank private member, for example. You've never been a preferred provider. And as their premiums constantly increase, they think, I've really got to start utilising this health fund better, so I'm going to go to a preferred provider practice. Alternatively, it could be that you've always been a preferred provider, but now you've chosen to no longer be a preferred provider. And because of that, the people within that health fund, if they're not really seeing that huge value there, they may be attracted to other practices that are preferred provider. So the health fund could be a reason why patients leave. Cheaper fees elsewhere, just not preferred provider. They've just keep hearing about there are cheaper fees elsewhere. They've seen these special offerings of exam and scale and clean for $100. Why not? I'm due anyway. Why not? I'll just save a few bucks and go over there. And if they go over there and they experience a quite similar experience to what they receive with you, why wouldn't they just stay there? And this is where, again, that increase in the level of customer service that you offer in your practice is so crucial, because it allows for patients to go somewhere else, experiencing that and say, yeah, but it's nothing like there. At my regular practice, I feel like I'm part of the family. They've got fantastic systems. I never have to wait. They've got great payment plans, all the things. The place looks fantastic. I'm going to continue going back to my original dentist. Seventh reason why patients leave is just sheerly convenience. Maybe they've always gone to you because you're local to where they live, but now they work in the city and like, all I have to do is go up one level in that building and I'm at the dentist. So it's just more convenient for me. Eighth reason is recommended by a trusted friend to go elsewhere. And nowadays, you know, even with all the Google reviews and stuff like that, there are theories that people will trust a Google review over and above a trusted friend. But if a trusted friend says, you got to go to my dentist, they're just awesome, they certainly might be enticed by that and go elsewhere. The ninth reason is that they're wooed by a competitor. This competitor, oh my God, they've got a scanner. Oh my God, they offer Invisalign or that you know, skin injections or whatever the thing, a special offering financially. So being wooed by a competitor, it's not like you've done anything wrong, but they're seeing something that they might be missing out on over there. I'm going to give them a try. 10th reason is inflexible booking hours. And so if you used to always have an evening session available or a weekend session available, and then all of a sudden you've restricted all that down and you're really only open 8 to 5 or 8 to 6 during the hours that other people work, they just may not be able to get in. And they're like, I need to go somewhere else. I can't take time off work. I need to be able to go into a dentist on a weekend or an evening. There's more reasons though. And another 4 I've got for you. Another reason why patients leave is your practice failed to deliver on promises. So there used to be a certain standard of care or a type of system or a way of, you know, paying off an account or whatever, and that's changed. And so now, you know, you're kind of failing on your promises to deliver. Could be even a promise of, I really assure you that this is the best treatment for you. You're going to love the results, all the rest of it. Something goes wrong, don't love the results, you failed to deliver on the promises. 12th reason is poor customer service by the team. Teams are changing all the time for a lot of dental practices. With every team changeover, changing team members within the team, you run the risk of having the customer service level drop. And the minute that happens, you run the risk of losing patients. And again, customer service. Jess, I'm so pleased you raised that question before and that you're going to be seeing that presentation. As I say, it doesn't take an enormous amount to deliver unanticipated customer service, really great customer service, and the job satisfaction for the people involved increases as well. So there's a strong ongoing incentive behind that. Now, number 13 is maybe the patient no longer trusts you. I've had a couple of fillings done by this dentist and both of them failed, or I've had a root canal and the tooth reinfected, or whatever. I had a crown place and it had to be kept being remade by the lab. My trust in this person is failing somewhat. And so the trust goes, I'm going to try somewhere else. And the 14th reason that we've identified as why patients leave your practice is if they're a new patient, you failed to build effective rapport and failed to meet expectations. Patients will come to your practice as a new patient with a series of expectations. Those expectations come from what maybe a trusted friend or family member said to them, what your Google reviews say about you, what image your website and Facebook page portrays. And if they turn up and they're like, this is nothing like what was promoted to me, they're like, the reasons I was coming in the first place aren't actually in reality. So I'm going to go somewhere else. And maybe as well, just a failure to build effective rapport. It was all okay. There was nothing wrong with it, but I didn't really feel connected to them. They weren't totally, really friendly. And so maybe that's the reason why they end up coming just once and once alone and try somewhere else in the future. Now, the reason why it's important to identify all the reasons why patients leave builds into what we're going to be talking about towards the end of this presentation, and that is making sure your inactive patient list isn't always growing. So we're going to come back over these reasons very briefly later on. Once we've got that list of patients, whether it be 1 page, 10 pages, 100 pages, once we've got that list of patients, we then have to consider, okay, how are we going to try to get these patients to come back in and give us another burl? And from a mode of communication perspective, it's important to understand the differences in level or in terms of engagement of these different modes of communication, because we can be easily inclined to think, let's just SMS everyone or email everyone because it's cheap and quick and we get through this whole list straight away. However, is it effective? Sometimes no. So as a very brief outline, because we did go through this with the last couple of webinars, very briefly, phone calls are fantastic. Traditionally, one of the best ways you can communicate with a patient, because in the past, people would tend to answer the phone. Before mobiles and things, we would answer the phone. We were usually at home or at work and we'd answer the phone, and then we're having a one-on-one engaging conversation with them. However, nowadays, more so, people are not answering their phone. We're leaving messages. The messages don't get listened to. The voicemails don't get listened to. And so phone calls are becoming less relevant. If your practice has a large patient base that is more of an older generation, keep telephoning them. They're still answering their phone calls. However, if you're close to a university and you've got a bunch of students, don't phone them. They don't want to talk to you. SMSs, wonderful. Very, very high open rate on SMSs. However, what happens when they've read your SMS and it drops down after they've received a few more? Out of sight, out of mind. And so, yes, it's a high open rate, but very low engagement rate. Email, very low open rate when they're not expecting an email from you. Some people don't look at their emails for weeks and weeks. Others, like me, look at it every few minutes. And so email is great because you can attach links and documents and all the things and make them very compelling. However, the open rate lends itself not to be all that great, of course, unless you're SMSing them first and saying, I've just sent you an email. It's important. Can you read it? Then we're increasing that email open rate. But be aware, letters are great. Letters still, it's bulky, what they call bulky. So it's something tangible in their hands. It leaves a stronger impression on the brain than just merely reading something on a computer screen. You can also add lots of information around it as well. And when we are talking about attracting back inactive patients, we're going to be talking about what changes have we made to this practice, which is the reason why you should try us again. And so all of a sudden, newsletters with images and links to website pages and all these sort of things are a great way of communicating in a letter that you couldn't do over the phone. Social messaging, only young generation really use that as a reliable source of interaction and communication. Most practices have a broader age group than just a younger generation. And so open rate, not that great. Impression, not that great. So do still be aware of the mode of communication that you choose. The message, that's the next thing that is going to play a role in how effective you're going to be in attracting back your inactive patients. Just saying, why don't you come back, isn't a compelling enough reason. What's in it for them? We need to give them a reason why to come back. And so there are various things that you can do. Number one, you can provide an incentive. So the incentive could be time. It could be come in for a complimentary 15-minute check where we get to give you a bit of a tour around the practice. We've got some renovations happening, or we've had some renovations. We've got a new piece of equipment, or whatever the thing is, or we want to provide you a free cosmetic consultation. So it could be a time incentive, or it could be financial. Come back in for a half-price checkup and clean, re-experience us. We'd love to have you back. We hated seeing you go. So come back in for this incentive. The message may also be, if you've got a new team, new and better team, more professional, you've got new uniforms, everyone's raised the bar because you've gone through the presentation of improving the level of customer service in your practice, then certainly talk about that. The new team could be a new dentist. Maybe the previous dentist wasn't that rapport building. Maybe they were having a lot of failures, or whatever the reasons are. And so we do talk about the new team if that's what's going on in your particular practice. Victoria, I also wonder where you get the data of the mode of communication, how old it is. I work with thinker personalities who will want to know this information. My personal experience is along the lines as you indicate. And Victoria, I like that question because I think it ends up being unique to your particular practice. I've got one client who's got 6 practices, and each of those 6 practices have a different demographic. One of them, I was indicating before, they are really close to a university, and most of their patients are young and in essence a bit transient because they're going to hang around for a couple of years and then they're off, relocating back to wherever they come from to be able to practice what they have learned. Whereas one of their other practices is in an area where it's very well established and has a higher age demographic. And so I think it's a very relevant thing to do some studies around your particular area. And this might be an area where ChatGPT can assist. Now, ChatGPT, I think it's out to now 2022. They're getting more and more current all the time. But that's a very interesting question to put in. For me here, I live in Huntingdale, Victoria, Australia. Huntingdale, Victoria, Australia, what is the age demographic for this area? It may give me that information. I could put all that information to ChatGPT and say, with that information, what would be the best mode of communication? But your practice itself may attract the younger of that area, or the older of that area, or the professional of that area, or the students of that area as well. So I think it's worthy of finding out, because we need to be aware of this. What mode of communication is going to work best with our patients in terms of confirming appointment times, tracking them for recall strategy, tracking them for incomplete treatment, and inactive patients as well. So terrific question, but I think it does come down to a little bit of study in your particular patient base. So if you've got new team members, new practitioners, that's the thing to message out there to the world. My pleasure, Victoria. Thanks for the thanks. New owners. That's a big one, because with new owners means new systems, new team, new this, new that, new changes. And that might be a wonderful incentive for people to come in and go, it was getting a bit old and shabby. Since it's got new owners, I'm going to go back in and have it and check it all out. Maybe you've changed systems. Maybe now you have got a suite of payment plans. Do a song and dance about that. Maybe you used to be running late all the time, but now you've got your better systems in place and you run to time all the time. Do a song and dance about that. That might be the only reason they left. Another way of messaging effectively is compelling dental or clinical reasons. So educating your patients. Maybe they are going somewhere else now, or maybe they're just not going back to the dentist because they're a loyal patient, but it hasn't been the 5-year mark yet, so I haven't done my recall yet. But give them a compelling clinical reason, dental reason why they should come back in again. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. New services, we now have orthodontics, we now have whitening, we now have EMS for a much more comfortable cleaning. Any of these sort of changes are compelling, even if it's just one of them, compelling. Just the running to time or the broader payment plans that you've got arranged now, them by themselves, compelling reasons to message out to everybody, including your inactive patient base, because that might be reason enough to come back in. Maybe you've got an updated website, or you've got a whole bunch more Google reviews that people may not be aware of, or you've now introduced a Facebook page, or you've been doing a whole lot of great posting on your Facebook page. Tell them about that. Even if it's just that, nothing else, tell them about that. Get them re-engaged with your practice in some way. A great thing is the survey. Why did you go? And it's really quite interesting, the emotional response when someone reaches out and says, you know what, we loved having you as a patient. We hated seeing you go. We'd love you to give us a try again, or at the very least, give us some ideas on how we can improve so we don't continue losing patients like you who we love. And so a survey can be a terrific way of engaging them back in that process of improvement as a practice. And then they feel they've got a hook into it. They've got a compelling reason to come along and say, oh, I wonder if my ideas came through here. Especially if you then followed up with the survey with Victoria, since you were the last one that messaged me. Victoria, thank you so much for your survey, taking the survey for us. Your feedback was invaluable. And because of what you said, we have now got systems in place to make sure that we run on time. And so if you ever wanted to visit us again, we will be running on time. And so you imagine that as a patient, you would come back, I think, for that, if that was the only reason that you left in the first place. So coming back to the incentive reason, the kind of different types of incentives that we can provide could be $25 off just because we miss you. How about 50% discount on an exam and cleaning? How about a complimentary exam? How about a welcome backpack, getting you back on track pack that includes exam, bite wings, and a scar and cleaner for a smaller price? Now, discounting always comes with its drawbacks as well as its benefits. If your patient has relocated to another practice, but they're due for a checkup and clean anyway, they have known and liked and trusted you in the past, they're like, oh, I'll save a few bucks, I might as well go back there again. And you've raised that bar of customer service and patient experience, then they're likely to then go, things have improved here. I've actually missed being here. This is good. I may hang around there. The other thing to be aware of when we're discounting inactive patients to come back in, and indeed new patients to come back on board again, is always make sure you provide financial incentives for your existing loyal and perpetual patients. It's like that thing, I'm always a member of Foxtel, and then you hear about somebody else going, I rang up Foxtel because I was going to leave and they provided me with an even better deal, so I stayed. I'm like, well, I never even threatened to leave and I don't get the special deal. What the hell's with that? Always make sure you are putting things in place to obviously value your regular ongoing patients as well. Don't only provide the financial incentives to those that have left you or you're trying to get them to come in for the first time. So there are some little financial incentives ideas that you may want to take on board. From a dental incentive perspective, the sort of things to talk about are things that are relevant to the patient. You'll have 100 reasons why patients should return for a dental reason. However, bring that down to reasons that are really relevant. What's in it for me? Relevant for that particular patient. So allow them to understand that we're checking for decay, cracks and chips. We want to catch things nice and early to avoid irreversible nerve damage. Oh my gosh, I don't want nerve damage. What if something's happening? I'm not even aware of it. Ensure your gums are healthy and your breath is fresh. Nobody wants bad breath. What do you mean? My breath may not be fresh. I haven't had a cleaning done for 5 years. Crippy. I should get back in again. We have got maintaining previous treatment, like if you had braces, implants, crown and bridge work, veneers. Let's make sure we maintain that. You don't want to waste your money. And the elimination of systemic infection. So if you've got if you're a high risk for stroke or cardiac issues, diabetes, you want to make sure your mouth is being kept in a healthy way, because the bacteria in your mouth has a direct impact on these systemic conditions that you may be suffering. And so provide them with a dental incentive. Sometimes can be, we're getting the responsible person out here. Yes, I do want to have nice fresh breath when I kiss people and talk to people at social functions, and I want to make sure that I'm keeping my whole body nice and healthy. So just some ideas around that. Here's an example letter. Again, I'd encourage you to get a version from ChatGPT. Say things like, make it sound really engaging and friendly, more informative than salesy. And the more instruction that you can give to ChatGPT, the better the result you're going to get. But it's a great starting point. And then read it yourself, rewrite areas to make sure that it's sounding authentic and engaging, and that you are talking to somebody that you have known, liked, and trusted in the past. And so you want to reestablish that rapport. We have enjoyed having you as a patient of our dental practice over the past years. Assisting wonderful people such as yourself with their oral health gives us a great satisfaction, and we hope you have gained value from our services too. Looking through our schedule, I have noticed that it's been a little while since your last visit. I thought you might appreciate our Get Back on Track offer. Get Back on Track includes a full dental examination, bite wing x-rays, and a scale and cleaning for just $180. This is saving you $100. This letter was written years ago, by the way. It's probably all undercharged by now. I look forward to hearing from you and hope you can take advantage of our offer to get back on track. An alternative would be, if you can do this additional step, it's even better. I will give you a call over the coming days in case you would like to take advantage of our offer and get back on track. Wonderful if you can get that conversation happening. Warm regards, Julie on reception. You could also have it warm regards from the dentist themselves as well. Sometimes more compelling coming from the dentist. Certainly that is the case for incomplete treatment letters. So just a bit of an example there, and get the rest of the team to read it, give their input as well, because you kind of got this one chance to be nice and appealing with that letter. Now, we're talking about how to prevent your inactive list from growing, and this is the list to go through before you start sending out the letters, the SMSs, the emails, having the phone conversations. Before you do any of that, gather the team together. Go through every one of these 14 reasons patients leave that we delivered at the start of this webinar and think, could this one be relevant to us? What can we do to improve it a little bit? So, unhappy with service, get the whole team to go through increasing the level of customer service in your practice and start implementing a better way of interacting with patients, etc. Is the appearance of our practice looking shabby? Let's tie it up right now, because we're going to be recalling these patients in, reactivating them. We want them to see the difference. If it's moved away from the area, nothing much you can do about that. Just keep those people on your list, because they may have moved back into the area. Or it may have only been a couple of suburbs away and their new dentist really isn't satisfying them and they really did like seeing you after all. So it's I'm only going every 6 months. I might as well keep going back to the place I really liked. Has there been substantial changes in your fees? If there has been, address it. There's nothing wrong with it, addressing it with a patient that's already inactive. We understand that we had a fee increase, just to give you an indication of what that then allowed us to offer you. We have got now this improvement, that improvement, we've got a scanner, we've got the this, we've got the that, we've been able to add an additional team member. Give them the reasons, the value, the increased value, so they can see those changing fees and go, now I find that reasonable. It wasn't just gouging me. Now I find it reasonable. If you got a new practitioner in place, if that's not relevant, forget about it as a reason. If it is relevant, make sure that you are including that as part of your messaging when you are going to be communicating with these inactive patients. Health fund, has that played any role in anything? Address it. Cheaper fees elsewhere, that equals we need to justify our fees with the amount of value that we are providing. And so that's where you talk about, this is the increase, we've gone to a concerted effort at this practice to increase the level of customer service. We are now delivering unanticipated customer service. When you turn up here, you have an experience that you generally don't have anywhere else, and you leave feeling delighted and you don't want to go anywhere else. And so talk about that within, but put that positive spin on it, the what's in it for me. Convenience, sometimes you can't do much about that. It's a bit like the moved away from the area. Still leave them on your list, because if you are offering something better than before, then they may indeed return to you. Recommended by a trusted friend to go elsewhere, same as convenience and moved away from the area, as well as rude by competitor, same thing. We just want to talk about what we've done to increase the patient, improve the patient experience here. So woo them back again. Inflexible booking hours, you can certainly do something about that. Start offering an evening, start offering a Saturday morning or full Saturday or early morning hours. Your practice failed to deliver on promises. Again, we want to talk about, we've just gone to a concerted effort to improve the patient experience. These are the things that we've done. These are the comments that we've been getting from our existing patients. Woo them back. Poor customer service by team, same thing. Patient no longer trusts you, same thing. So if that trust, you won't know whether the patient has no longer trusted you or not, but when they start to see the improvements that have been intentionally made by your practice, they may want to come back and experience that new and improved version of your practice. And certainly if a new patient failed to build effective rapport, failed to meet expectations, just by moving through that, how to improve the level of customer service in your practice, you will address this, because the way new patients come in, effective rapport will be developed. You will be placing the expectations the patient should have come into your practice. So when they do come in, you'll be able to actually meet them. So that presentation goes through all of that. Marvelous, powerful stuff. So you consider this as a project. We're not just staying the same and reactivating our patients. We are making a song and dance about the improvements that we are making and giving these patients every incentive possible to come in and try us again. It is, moving forward, always good practice to always be on the ball. Are you always providing great service? What systems do you have in place to make sure you're always providing great service? I mentioned at the start that sometimes it just takes a staff changeover of one or two people and all of a sudden the standard drops. Make sure you're addressing the onboarding process, the recruitment process. Make sure you are recruiting people. That in your ad, it says, we are looking for people. You may not know dental, but you know good customer service and you love delivering it. They're the kind of people that we want to work in this organisation. This is the patient experience that we deliver. If you see yourself becoming excited by that, we want you working in our team. And then make sure that onboarding process, really effective training, support, and keeping that person accountable to the standard is going to really help make sure that you're always providing that great customer service. Survey existing happy patients. Don't just survey everybody. Look at the patients you're trying to build the practice with. Returning perpetual patients who are delightful to work with are usually the type that you want returning all the time, that you want to have more of in your practice. And so who are those patients? Most of you will know who those patients are. Maybe you can get a list of 10, 20, 50. Send them out a survey. They're more inclined. They've got a strong relationship with you. They're more inclined to complete the survey for you anyway. But just make it nice and simple for them. What do we do that makes you keep returning? What do you love about coming here as a patient? What ideas do you have of improvements that we could make that would make your experience even better? Nice and simple. So survey your happy patients, understand to systematize what you do really well, and introduce new and better ways of doing things to improve. Do have a mystery shopper come through once a year. You know, it doesn't matter if everyone knows about them or not. It could be an existing patient. It could be a brand new patient. It could be a cousin that you've got. But do have a mystery shopper coming through every year. It just helps you be able to see with clarity what your practice is delivering, because it's not you who's all in the weeds of everything, who's trying to find. You go blind to all those sort of things. And so the mystery shopper questionnaire, that download, I'll include that as part of the resources that will be provided to you in follow-up to this webinar, because the mystery shopper questionnaire includes the physical appearance of the practice. It also includes what your experience was when they were researching you online before they even turned up as well. Certainly stay in the minds of all of your patients. So keep communicating. A great way of communicating with your patients is through a newsletter. It can be emailed. Physical is always better, but it can be emailed. But you think about it, even if you weren't going to a particular GP anymore, if they kept sending you something out every 6 months that was updating you on new things we've introduced, new systems that we have, how we've improved things or whatever, you wouldn't necessarily go, I don't want to receive these things anymore. You go, it's once every 6 months. But then you get a chance to be in communication with your patients. And so when you are making improvements in the practice, when you do have a new practitioner, a new team member, a new owner, whatever the thing is, you are always then reaching out to your inactive patients as well as your active patients. So you are constantly tracking this group of people and trying to attract them back into your practice. And systematize the management of this process. And so one of the things that I do encourage receptionists and or practice managers and or practice owners is to establish an online calendar. What that allows you to do is to not forget about these important things. And so say this is a project that we're going to do here right now in March. And now in March, in 2 years' time, I'm going to put in that calendar to provide an alert notification, a reminder for me to do this same process again. That same process can be used, that online calendar can be used. Remember to send out another newsletter every 6 months. Remember to maintain the autoclave. Get the repair people to come out and do a maintenance schedule on the autoclave or the other pieces of equipment. So these sort of online calendars can be wonderful at making sure you don't just forget about these things in the busyness of the day. They remain important and of high priority. And you don't have to keep all that information in your head either. I've got to remember to do this in another couple of years. I feel like I'm failing if I don't remember to do that. No. Pop it in the diary, forget about it. You've managed that whole situation. The last and final thought I'm going to give you is, or leave you with, is keep the faith. If your first attempt at contacting your former patients was not fruitful, contact them every few months with a recall card, a newsletter, an update, a blog, etc. Your competitor may disappoint them, the one they're seeing now, or they may change their preferences. I no longer have health insurance. I don't need to see a preferred dentist anymore. Patients' needs and preferences are always changing, so there is no reason to write them off forever. They may just end up returning. So the last slide is just that QR code for our website, dentalbusinessmastery.com.au. Do jump on that, have a good look around, provide any questions or comments that you've got. Put them all in the Q&A, because I'm certainly going to be hanging around for the next few minutes to make sure I address all of those. But I can't encourage you enough to really tackle this as a great project for your organization. And the reason I say that is because it's not just looking after the inactive patients and trying to reactivate them when you go down this journey. When you are making those differences, those improvements to the way you do things within your team members, the services that you offer, the systems that you have, that is making sure that your existing patients want to continue staying with you, because it just keeps getting better here. I know they want me to stay because they keep making improvements in order for me to stay. It also provides a wonderful new patient experience for anyone new that you've got coming into the practice. All of these improvements are things that they talk about, your existing patients talk about with their friends and families. And so you're doing more of that organic reach out to new business coming into your doors as well. And so this one project can have a knock-on ongoing effect, positive effect on the success that you can achieve within your dental practice. Jessica, question. We are considering sending a letter to patients who have transferred to another dentist. We want to let them know they are welcome to return to our practice if they are dissatisfied with the new clinic. What is your feedback on this? And would you have a template for this? I can certainly provide you with a template for this particular one. And I'm just going to pop a little note for myself, so I'll include it in the resources afterwards. But new clinic patient comeback. What I say about that is rather than have that framed as, and you may not have intended this, but rather than having that letter framed as, just in case you're dissatisfied with where you're going now, why don't you come on back again? Have it more about how you've improved. So you would never have left in the first place, because patients leave to go to a new clinic for a couple of different reasons. Yes, Kamal, I will send that template to everyone. Don't you worry about that. Then it'll be in the resources. So look out for your follow-up email that's coming out later this afternoon. Thank you. That is my pleasure. So the reason why sometimes patients leave you for another dental practice is either you have become dissatisfying to them. So maybe there's been all the reasons that we gave before, whatever the reason is, that they are now not as satisfied as being a patient, a long-term patient of yours, or they are satisfied with you, but the other place offered something that you don't. And so one of the things, one of the wonderful things that we do get is when we get the request for records for a patient that's relocated to another practice, we get to know which practice they've gone to, research that practice, have a look at their Facebook page, have a look at their website. Are they offering anything that is quite obviously different to you? And can you start offering that in your particular premises? And so with that particular letter, Jess, rather than saying, just in case you're going there and you don't like going there, why don't you come back? Give them a reason to come back. It doesn't have to be a financial or time incentive offer. It's always best and more long-term if it's because you've improved the way you do things there. What I'd be more inclined to do would be, I know that you've relocated to another dentist and we hated seeing you go. Would you mind letting us know the reason why, just by completing this little survey? It could be a 3-question survey. What did we do that you liked? What do we do that you didn't like? And what could we do in the future to improve things for everybody? And so finding out the reasons why they left in the first place will be crucial for you getting it right for them to be able to come back into the fold again. So just thank them for the feedback on the survey, and then put a note for yourself to improve that area, then contact them again and saying, just to let you know, your feedback was meaningful. So meaningful that we've made that adjustment within our practice, and we wanted to thank you. You don't even have to say, come in and try us again. You can say, just thank you. That's enough of a reason sometimes for them to come back in. They've been involved in the solution. And so that letter, I think it's more about make improvements, let them know of the improvements that you've made. You may do some research about that competitor and implement those improvements in your practice, or I would be more inclined to possibly survey them instead. Another question here. There are so many times patients left because we are not preferred provider or Medibank and Bupa, and Medibank and Bupa, they don't offer get preferred provider easily. That's right. Now, this preferred provider issue is a big one. When I had my practice, I could not imagine a situation where I would hand over control over my fee list to an external entity whose agenda it was to make it as low as possible. How am I supposed to cover my expenses? Every dental practice has different array of expenses. I believe that with the increasing, and it's not just I believe, the facts show that with the constantly substantial increases to health fund premiums that people are paying, more and more people drop out of extras all the time. I am formulating in my brain a way forward for dental practices that want to extricate themselves away from the preferred provider, because an example that is rolling out right now, it is harder to recruit now than ever before. Dental assistants, dental receptionists are asking for higher pays than they ever have before, because they know they'll get them, because the pool is small. So supply is low, demand is high, prices go up. It's basic economics. Preferred provider practices will find it far more difficult to attract and maintain a very talented, experienced team base. If I were you, if that constantly question coming up of the preferred provider, you need to match that with, yes, our fees are higher, but our patient experience is even better than before. We deliver you a patient experience that you'll never be able to get at any other practice. And that's where you get that power. So have a page on your website, and I'll include this too. There's a practice I used to work at many years ago, Pinewood Dental Group. They've got a great page on their website that details why they are not preferred provider. So definitely have that as a page on your website. But along with that, say, because we have control over our fees, that's why we can provide this level of service to you. We don't run late. We don't rush you through your appointment times. We have scanners and this and that and all the other things. We have a higher caliber of team member because of the fact we have control over our own fee list. And so those two things, I was going to put here, Pinewood Dental Group preferred provider page on website. I'll send that through to you as well, because that's a big, substantial issue for patients. And if it's just about the money, then you're not giving them much of a choice but to go somewhere else. It has to be more about the money, more than the money. It has to be about the money. Yes, we acknowledge that, we respect that, we honor that, your concerns around that. However, look at the value that you get here. You don't get it anywhere else. Another thing that I'm looking into at the moment is that there is a very effective membership plan that can help counter the preferred provider. So say to your patients, drop your dental, become a member of our membership plan here. You pay a little bit every month, and then you get your checkups and cleans and x-rays complimentary, because in essence, you've already paid for that, and you get a discount on regular restorative services, this much, ortho, this much. And so you provide that, take the preferred provider issue away completely by offering a dental plan that you have directly with your patient. There'll be more information about this coming out in the coming months as I do a bit more research around it. There's also the extras jar. This is an alternative health insurance. They do it for vets, for pet insurance as well. But this is where you drop out of your extras cover, you start having cover with extras jar instead. And with extras jar, you're basically putting money away in their bank account. They're investing it. That's where they make their money. But you have always access to whatever pool of money you've contributed. So there are no limits every year. There's no limits to the number of crowns you can claim against, or you've just got this constant source of money until you drain your own extras jar. A couple of great ideas that are out there and available for dental practices. Sorry, could not get the name of the practice. That was Pinewood Dental Group. I'm pretty sure it's .com.au, pinewooddentalgroup.com.au. Go to their page. That is why we are not preferred provider. And another question here, I'm facing the same issue with non-preferred provider list. Mandeep said that maybe this is worthy of a webinar all by itself. And so we'll certainly address that in the coming weeks or months. We're going to get a topic just on this if it's such a big issue. Lynn said, hi, do you have a suggested template or script we can use for reactivation? So the script that I would suggest, making sure that I'm answering all those questions, is when we go back a bit, that example letter, if you're providing some sort of financial incentive, or you could tweak it a little bit to have the time incentive. So I'll put this as a separate Word document as a in the resources in the follow-up. And I might also see if I can include one that says this is how we've changed our services. So you've got a template around that as well. Harry said, great presentation as always. Thank you, Harry. I encourage everyone to listen to my latest podcast episode. It is a doozy, a wonderful podcast episode. I had the absolute pleasure of speaking with Harry, and there's going to be a series of these podcast discussions about how to really tap into the business side of dentistry to help you all be more successful. Harry, thank you so much for coming along to today's webinar. I appreciate it enormously. And Mandeep said, thanks, and that is my absolute pleasure. If there are any other questions, what time are we now? Oh, we're 3 minutes over. I always pride myself on being on time. If there's any other questions or comments, please enter them into the chat. I'll add all those bits and pieces in the resources. Fingers crossed it comes out this afternoon so you can watch it all this evening and tap into it this evening. If anything happens in my day that makes it chaotic, it'll come out tomorrow. We had 33 turn up today, and that is really holding true to what's been the case. We usually have about a third of the people turning up live to these webinars as to what registered, and so That's certainly been the case today as well. Victoria said, thank you so much, Julie, enlightening and very generous as usual. You are a glorious human being. Thank you, Victoria. Always love our chats together. And Jane said, thank you so much, Julie. Amazing webinar and very resourceful. You're wonderful. Thank you. I love compliments. Love them. So thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And I really do appreciate everyone attending live. It's a chunk out of your day. You could be doing, having lunch and doing anything else enjoyable, but I really do appreciate it when you do turn up to the events live. It's, I remember years and years ago when I started doing webinars back like 10 years ago. And I have, sometimes I do it to nobody and pretend there were people there just to keep me company. So please, things have improved. We all appreciate you, Jessica. Thank you. That's very kind of you. What a lovely thing to say. Thank you. Thank you. And Lynn said, I surely learned a lot. Can't wait to share it with my colleagues in our practice. Magnificent, magnificent. And, with that whole preferred provider versus value webinar that I want to do, because it does seem to be a bit of an issue, always share those sort of topics with me, because we want to be able to help with the things that are really relevant to you. Ashley said, great information. Thank you so much. Thank you for your comment. And Mandeep said, from where I can retrieve the template. So that template's going to be included in the resources that I share with you later on this afternoon. So everyone will get a link. I'm going to share my screen quickly again. I know that you all have to go, but I'm going to be sending you the link to this page. Thank you for participating. It's got all of the previous webinars in this short webinar series of 4. It's got them all here, and all of the resources, the downloads, the templates, the scripts of the past titles. This afternoon, by tomorrow latest, it'll have today's recording and today's resources that I've promised you as well. If I miss anything, feel free to reach out by email anytime. So that's where those templates are going to end up being, and I'll be as swift as I can in getting that together for you. And unless there is anything else, I think we can cut out. Look at all those lovely names there. That's wonderful. Thank you again, everybody. I'm going to stop the recording